worked with every diet out there, but we've done a lot of research looking into plenty of the diets that are really popular, especially. So I really want this to be interactive. I want to hear what you guys have heard about the diets, what you think about them, if you've tried them, if they worked for you, things like that. So this isn't a judgmental lecture or whatever, just an informational thing, just bounce ideas off of each other, okay? So first of all, we're going to go over kind of the structure of the presentation. We're going to talk about the ketogenic diet. I know that one's huge right now. Can't even go on Pinterest without like getting like 3 recipes for keto right away. Weight Watchers is a pretty common one, and then gluten-free diet. Some people are actually trying it for weight loss. So these diets were selected for weight loss. Usually that's why people go on diets, or why they're interested in going on a diet. So that's going to be the claim and kind of the benefit for all these diets, kind of a common theme throughout. But we're going to dive into how each one works, maybe why you would see success on the diet, and talk about, is it realistic long term? So first of all, does anyone want to volunteer? Has anyone tried any of these 3 diets that we're going to talk about? Okay. Which ones have you tried?
Weight Watchers.
Weight Watchers. Okay. And are you still on Weight Watchers, or have you done it in the past?
I've done it different times in the past and was not really successful.
Okay.
I've been doing it since January and I've seen some success and I'm feeling really good about it.
Okay, great. That's awesome. And what about you, Beth?
I'm currently on Weight Watchers, but I did try the keto diet a few months ago, right before I went on Weight Watchers, because I have a son and son-in-law that have been successful, and I felt like I followed it way more to the T than they do, and I lost like 6 or 7 pounds, and then I didn't lose anything.
Okay.
And that was so disappointing, because I felt like I was, reading, there's so much you have to know. So, anyway,
Okay.
I'm anxious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And if you guys have things to add, because I've never personally tried any of these diets, so it's way different when it's on a personal level and you've actually tried it and have seen benefits and things that don't work. So chime in with those and let the group know, just so that we can kind of get a well-rounded idea of each diet. Okay, so first, before starting talking about the ketogenic diet, I just want to have a little discussion about what foods have carbs in them. So shout out some foods that you guys know have carbs. Breads, pastas, potatoes, fruits, yep. What else? Those are the big ones. Definitely got that down. Vegetables have carbs. Let's see. Sugar is a carbohydrate, so anything that's going to have sugar is going to be carbs. Vegetables is the one that people don't often think about. Some vegetables are lower in carbs than others. A lot of vegetables, like carrots, spinach, those things, are really high in fiber and water, so they don't have a ton of carbohydrates. But then some of the other vegetables, like the potatoes, like you mentioned, and some of the other starchy ones are going to be higher in carbohydrates. So it's just, it's good to keep a big picture in mind when we kind of get this really negative attitude towards carbohydrates, especially in the media, but some of the most healthiest foods that we know and have seen in studies benefit your health are the vegetables, the fruits, and the whole grains, which are all made up of carbohydrates. So the ketogenic diet, just a quick breakdown. Usually you have to stay below 10% of your calories from carbohydrates and consume upwards of 65% of your calories from fat. The reason you have to be really strict about this is because you're trying to reach ketosis. So carbohydrates are the primary fuel of the body. It's the body's preferred fuel source for energy. And so when you're restricting like that, the body kind of goes, it's kind of thinking starvation, and it starts using these ketone bodies as fuel. So most of the cells in our bodies can use ketone bodies as energy, but like the brain and certain other organs need carbohydrates to function. So that's why you would never want to cut out all the carbohydrates in your diet, and it's pretty hard to do really when you think about the foods that we eat. But for a lot of you, and even for me when I first read that, I was like, I don't really know what that looks like. 10% of calories from carbs, 65% of calories from fat. No idea what that really looks like. So we're going to look into that in a little bit. Why do we see success? So carbs are largely water, and so some of that weight loss that's going to happen initially, kind of like you said, 6 to 7 pounds right off the bat, is going to be because you're depleting your body of those carbohydrates, and so therefore you're losing water. Other reasons are because you're truly using fat as fuel once you start getting away from using the carbs as your energy source. So that could potentially contribute to some weight loss. So what the research shows is that, yes, there's usually weight loss initially, and it is significant. But, you know, when you're reading these articles in the media and things, you have to keep in mind, you know, statistically significant, meaningfully significant. A lot of studies show that you do lose weight over the control group, but is it enough that is what you guys would want to see losing? You know, is it more than that 6 to 7 pounds, or is it just about that much? And a lot of studies do show that some of the weight loss can be maintained up to 6 months, but some of the longer studies, up to a year, show that a lot of that weight returns. And everybody's different. There are people who are successful, and of course, like I know personally some people who have been successful longer than a year, but a lot of the research shows that either because of people being non-compliant or going off the diet, or even for some of those people who stay on the diet, they just can't maintain and keep the weight off. And then past the year, there's really not studies that show the impact of the ketogenic diet. So, I mean, besides just weight loss, I know we're a very weight-focused society, but what is it doing to our blood lipid profile? How is it impacting our heart health? You know, a lot of those things, like heart disease, are silent killers. You can't necessarily tell that your blood pressure is high or that your cholesterol is high. And those are the things that are going to put you at risk for heart disease. So I'm not necessarily saying that the ketogenic diet does put you at risk for these health disease or these chronic diseases, but we just don't know at this point. And there is some mixed results for the short term going on the study. Some cholesterol levels are improved while others worsen. So if you are going to be on the ketogenic diet, then or if you know people, I would encourage them to get their numbers for their blood lipids before and while they're on it for a while, just to see, are those changing or are they changing for the worse? You know, you really want to focus on the LDL cholesterol, which is your bad cholesterol, and the HDL, you want to make sure that's going up because that's your good cholesterol, or at least staying the same, and just making sure your total cholesterol isn't getting too high. And then triglycerides is another thing, which being on the ketogenic diet, some of the triglyceride levels either usually improve or stay stagnant. And that's because triglycerides are actually usually are high, resulting from a lot of excess carb intake or from alcohol intake. So those ones don't necessarily get worse, but what's really important to watch is the cholesterol. So that's just something to keep in mind. So now let's talk about what does this 10% of calories from carbs look like. So I'm going to use a 2,000 calorie diet when I'm explaining this. Keep in mind that for women, we often don't need to consume 2,000 calories a day. So even like what the Nutrition Facts panel goes off of, you kind of have to keep that in mind because that's based off of the 2,000 calorie diet. And women, because generally we're shorter, we have less muscle mass because we have less testosterone, things like that, we usually don't require as many calories as men. So 10% of 2,000 calories turns in, or equates to about 50 grams of carbs. So I provided some examples of what that looks like. For example, a slice of bread, and this isn't gonna be like a Sara Lee, like really tiny pieces. This is like a normal slice of bread. Is gonna be 20 to 25 grams of carbs. So you can see if you had 2 pieces of bread, that's it for your daily allotment. So that means no carbs from vegetables, no carbs from fruit, no flavored yogurt that has a little bit of fruit or sugar in it. Milk has carbs, didn't talk about that one, but lactose is the sugar in milk, so it's gonna have carbs. So you can see how fast that happens. 1 can of pop, which obviously if you're on the ketogenic diet, you probably shouldn't be drinking pop. But that's gonna be about 39 grams of carbs. Spaghetti, 43 grams. So you can see it's used up really fast. And you have to track really closely. But those are some higher carb options. So looking at vegetables, which are on the lower end, about a serving of baby carrots, broccoli, and green beans is about 7 to 10. So if you're eating the right carbs, you can still have a few servings and make it work. And that's, you know, if I definitely don't promote the ketogenic diet, but if you're gonna be on it, definitely focusing on some of these things, high in fiber, high in nutrients, and just low in carbs, so you can still get those vitamins that you need from vegetables. And then some of the higher vegetables and fruits are gonna be the sweet potatoes, apples, bananas. Bananas is a pretty concentrated source of carbs. So those things are gonna be higher, 25 to 30 grams per serving. Does anyone have any questions so far? Yes.
So on a normal diet, how many carbs does a person need?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what's recommended is about 45 to 65% of calories from carbs is what the dietary guidelines recommend. So that's quite a bit more in regards to what this is recommending. Anybody else?
Is there a difference in natural carbs, like what's the vegetable versus sugar you're dumping in a glass of juice?
So, I guess what you would consider sugar is a natural form of carbohydrate, but in foods, for example, like fruits, vegetables, those things are gonna have fiber. And some of those foods, when they have the added component of fiber, it kind of slows down the absorption in our body. So have you heard of the glycemic index? So things that are high on the glycemic index, which would be like potatoes or straight sugar or things like that, our body, the blood sugar is going to spike really high when you're taking those things in really quickly. Whereas like with things like fiber, it's going to slow it down. So you're not going to see that like quick spike in blood sugar. So that's like the biggest difference that I would say between the different types of carbs.
Do you mind a question about, I noticed that both bananas and apples, for example, were high in carbs. I'm guessing the apple has more fiber than the banana. I mean, if you're picking a choice between the two, so because of the higher fiber, would you say the banana or the apple's the better choice?
As far as that, the apple is gonna have more fiber, but I wouldn't say that the banana is any worse for you. They both have different nutrients in them, so I wouldn't really choose one over the other as a better choice. The thing that, people don't really like what dietitians preach about, variety and balance, like not specific things that you need to cut out, but it's really true. eating the rainbow is the easiest way to get all the nutrients your body needs. Because like, for example, carrots and red pepper are gonna have a lot more beta carotene because you can tell in red and orange fruits and vegetables, those are higher in beta carotene versus something that's green. But then those green vegetables are gonna be higher in vitamin K and things like that. So in order to get all of the nutrients we need from foods, it's really good to get a good assortment. So I would say both are great. Maybe just don't eat the same one all the time. Just try to strive for that variety. I don't know if that answers your question,
That's
Lacey.
helpful.
Okay. Okay, so then what does 70, so I'm using 70% even though I said 65. Some people even go as low as 60% of calories from fat, but what most research uses to make sure that subjects are maintaining ketosis is 78% of calories from fat. So just to explain the discrepancy there, but for a 2,000 calorie diet, that means about 155 grams of fat per day. So what does that look like? So I put some leaner proteins on there just so you can see. One chicken breast is only 4 grams. So you're probably not gonna be able to eat a ton of chicken breast because you also have to maintain, some people on the ketogenic diet think that they can just eat a ton of protein, but you don't wanna be eating a huge proportion of protein either because you wanna be getting a lot of those calories from fat. So like same with tofu, if you're trying to do more of a plant-based diet, half cup of tofu only has 6 grams. Even a 4th ounce hamburger only has about 7 grams, give or take a little depending on the percent lean and fat. And then salmon, which is one of our fattier fishes, has about 11 grams. Walnuts, about a 4th cup is 13 grams. So some of these are starting to get a little bit higher, but you still have to get to 155 grams. That's why you see avocados a lot in keto recipes, because avocados are super high in fat. It's a good healthy fat, which is great. But I think people don't realize how many calories avocados actually have. It's about 320 per avocado. So, yeah, avocado is a great source of healthy fats, and it's a great way to get those, but just being mindful that, you know, it is gonna contribute to the calorie count for sure. And then oil, tablespoons, about 14 grams, so that just kinda gives you an idea of, you know, what it looks like. Let's see. Oh, the other thing that we don't really know because the research is lacking is the ketogenic diet preaches lots of fat, but it doesn't really specify what types of fat you're getting. So like saturated fat is gonna be the fat that's worse for our heart health. So those are gonna be things from like animal products, dairy, well, is an animal product, eggs, things like that, the marbling in meat, that's saturated fat. And you can tell by the fats that are solid at room temperature. So that's how you can tell if it's saturated. The unsaturated are gonna come from plant sources like olive, vegetable, canola oils, any plant-based things, so like peanuts. Although the one exception is coconut oil, that's actually saturated fat. And you can see that it is solid at room temperature, so that's kind of your key. Which I know coconut oil is kind of like a big thing right now, but research doesn't show that it's really any better for you. So, just a little, it's something to look into if you guys like it, and I know it has a great flavor, so, and it can definitely be incorporated into some of your dishes, just to keep in mind that it's a saturated fat, and maybe do your research on it. But I don't know where I was going. Got sidetracked. So yeah, liquid at room temperature, unsaturated, generally better for us than the solid fats. So what research lacks is people are just consuming high fat diets, but they're not, it's not differentiating between what type of fat they're consuming. So maybe a ketogenic diet, if you did it with plant fats, would have a less negative impact on your health and your heart health than if some were to use mainly animal fat. So there's some things, some research that still needs to be done, as far as the ketogenic diet. So, that's it for ketogenic diet in a nutshell. Do you guys have any questions or comments based off of that information?
I feel like low carb, high fat diet's been around for
Mm-hmm.
10 or 20 years. Something different, did you give it a new name?
They have been around for a very long time, and they kind of get revamped, like the Atkins diet, was the same kind of thought, really high fat, low carb, and it's been around even longer than that. So I don't know where the resurgence of the ketogenic diet came from, but they are studying the ketogenic diet for certain medical conditions. Like it's a proven treatment for epilepsy. It can actually reverse or lessen like symptoms of the seizures. So that's really cool. And diet can be used for medical conditions and have really great outcomes. So that's something where I would promote the ketogenic diet in some clinical settings. Right now, the research is looking into it and its effect on diabetes, but it's definitely not proven. I would not recommend it at this point. There needs to be a lot more research done on that. Also with cancer, we know that, and this idea has been around for a really long time, but it's really hard to study the effects of ketogenic diet on cancer patients because you can't really tell a cancer patient don't do chemo and try the ketogenic diet because that would be extremely unethical. But we know that cancer cells, they use carbohydrate as energy, and they metabolize carbs at a quicker pace. So the idea, which has been around forever, is that some cancer cells may use fat as fuel, or won't be able to use fat as fuel because they can't use fat as fuel, and our other cells can. So you can kind of target those cells by that. But that hasn't been proven either. So there's a lot of ideas about the ketogenic diet, and I think sometimes it gets brought back into the media based off of what's going on in its relation to other conditions and things like that. Another aspect is athletes. Athletes have looked into the ketogenic diet. I've done some research on that, and it's definitely not recommended for people who are, like, were you working out when you were on the ketogenic diet? No? Okay. Anything that's anaerobic exercise, like sprinting, powerlifting, things that require quick bursts of energy, you're not going to want to be on the ketogenic diet because you need glucose rapidly available for those kind of exercises. It's been looked into some for like endurance exercises, like aerobic, long distance running, things like that, because the primary fuel source is fat at lower intensities of exercise. But basically what the research says is that it doesn't really enhance performance. It just enhances the body's ability to use fat as fuel during the exercise. The ketogenic diet is being studied a lot, and if you're interested in learning more, there's plenty of research out there, specifically for whatever you're interested in learning about. But my general thoughts on it are that some weight loss has been shown, but we don't know what the other health impacts are or if it's realistic long term. And the only clinical use for it that's been proven is epilepsy. So while it's being looked into for other conditions, I would not recommend it for anything else. So that's just to give you guys a really general overview of the ketogenic diet. And if you have any other questions you think of, guys feel free to ask me. Okay. So Weight Watchers. I'm not as familiar with Weight Watchers as some of you guys are who have been on it. So if you guys have something to add that I missed or think something's wrong, because I know they've come out with a couple couple different versions of Weight Watchers over the years, so I'm pretty sure I pulled from the most recent one. So feel free to chime in. But how Weight Watchers works is you're assigned a daily, weekly, and with the newest one, a Fit Smart Points budget. So you try to keep in that budget for your day and your week. And the points are assigned to foods. So that's where the budget comes into play. Points are determined by nutrient values. So they're considering the calorie content, the saturated fat content, the sugar, and the protein in the foods. And that's how they assign the point values. And the rules they follow are that every food has a point, even including 0. Protein lowers the point value. And lower points are generally considered better because you're not gonna rack up your points as quick and use your budget as fast. Sugar and fat raise the point value, which makes sense. And then most produce and lean protein have a value of 0, so they're encouraging the intake of fruits and vegetables. Does that all sound about similar to what you understand? Okay. So why would you see success? I see Weight Watchers as a good educational tool because you're kind of learning a little bit about foods that maybe you should incorporate into your diet more, and foods that you kind of want to limit in moderation. And if you're interested in looking into why the point values are assigned the way they are, you can learn about the foods that have high saturated fat, high sugar, and that are higher in lean protein and things like that. So I think it's good from that standpoint. The downfall is all the tracking. Did you guys that tried it? What do you think about that?
I'll make some comments. I like their newest program this year, and I think it really is like a lifestyle learning to eat for life.
Mhm.
They have an app, and the tracking sounds like a lot, but we both know it's not
Okay.
near as bad. They have a bar scanner,
Mhm.
so you literally can scan the barcode on
Nice.
a package, and it'll tell you how many points. You can type something in, like when I first started, we were at a work get-together, and Steen already had things memorized, like, okay,
Wow.
you can have 8 taco chips, or whatever it was. And so it's not near as hard as what you think it is. And
Okay.
you don't have to track everything,
Mhm.
you know, especially the 0 points. You don't have to track those things. So don't you think it's pretty easy?
Like all fruit, all vegetables, and like a lot of protein besides like steak and stuff like that is free.
Okay.
In moderation.
In moderation, though, you can't just like eat a lot of it. But to me, I think that's easy because if you had a salad with chicken, then you know it's free. But if you put salad dressing on it, that's the kicker. That's where you're gonna rack up your points. But I don't know. I think it's
The app makes it really easy.
Okay, yeah, and that's awesome, and that's something that them utilizing technology is really cool, because I've seen some of those that you can even just like, some apps you can take a picture with your phone and it can analyze, or it can come up with what it thinks the nutrient content is. So that's awesome. I have a question in regards to that. Oh yeah, so what do you do about like mixed dishes, or like things you make at home?
Well,
there's a recipe part on
yeah.
the app where you can plug in the whole recipe and it will tell you per serving how much.
Okay.
And you can save those recipes, so if it's something, you know, it might take a little bit of time at the beginning, but
Mhm.
the same with your favorite foods, like if you scan something a couple times, as an example, you have a list of, you know, your most popular things, so you don't necessarily have to scan it every time. You can just click on it because it's gonna recognize what you've loaded in there in the
Okay.
past.
Gotcha,
And
that
it
makes
has
sense.
most restaurants too
Mm,
on there,
nice.
so if you go to someplace a lot, you'd be able to know what you can and cannot eat.
Okay, and so on the diet, do you guys feel like you're restricting a lot, or do you think it's pretty easy to fit into like your normal lifestyle?
I think for anybody that's wanting to lose weight, you know that you're gonna have some restrictions, but I think the Weight Watchers is pretty minimal. I mean, even if you were gonna have alcohol, I mean, it's obviously, you know, all points based, but I think it really helps you to learn what you can do for the life.
Mhm.
You don't eventually have to track, but if you're successful losing the weight and you have a good idea of what should be a lifestyle change.
Right. And that's kind of what, that's gonna be the message of the whole presentation. You know, people do want that quick fix. They want something that's gonna help them lose weight right away, but we know that you do really have to start making a lifestyle change to keep the weight off. You might be successful in losing it, but it's really a way that you think about food and practice it your whole life that's gonna help you be successful with maintaining a healthy weight. So yeah, I think Weight Watchers has some merit to it. One thing that just to be cautious of, some people who maybe have, are more like really type A or things like that, and even especially kids, Weight Watchers may be kind of dangerous just because like people who could develop an eating disorder like anorexia or things like that, just because it's so focused on maintaining points and like keeping track and tracking and things like that. It becomes something that they're just really focused on weight wise. So there's been some concern, especially for kids is the big one. Studies have shown that kids who start tracking at a young age kind of develop an unhealthy idea of weight and restricting foods. So I think Weight Watchers gets you thinking about nutrition, but just to make sure that you still have a really positive outlook on food, that there aren't bad and good foods, that we really can include all foods in our diet. There shouldn't be any foods that you can't ever have. It's just knowing about moderation and keeping that in mind. So yeah, that was great. Thank you for sharing that. And I know it is successful for a lot of people. So are there any other questions about Weight Watchers? Okay. So then the gluten-free diet. Has anyone heard of this for weight loss? Or has anyone tried it for weight loss? Okay. Well, the gluten-free diet, so how it works is you eliminate gluten, and gluten is, and gliadin, which is the protein found in gluten. And gluten can be found in wheat, rye, barley, couscous. Quite a few grains have gluten in them, but these are the main ones that we see often in our diet. There really isn't any evidence that the gluten-free diet works for weight loss. It's something that you see more in the media with celebrities and things like that, just trying something new. Why would you see success? It kind of comes back to the carbohydrate content of water. And then substitution of processed flour products for more whole grains, fruits, vegetables. So, you know, there are better carbs than others. So for these people who might be limiting their intake of like the high fat, sugary cookies and things like that, and starting to consume more of like the fruits and vegetables, you might see weight loss because you're making positive diet changes. Now, the gluten-free diet definitely has a place. For people with celiac disease and gluten intolerance, it's how they heal their gut. So for people with celiac disease, when they ingest gluten, it actually damages their, they're called microvilli in their intestines, and it flattens them. So that, and we know that the villi is what helps us absorb nutrients. So that can be really damaging and lead to malabsorption for people who have celiac disease and are consuming gluten. It can lead to malabsorption, and they're gonna have some symptoms of discomfort. There's also a whole nother diagnosis that's called non-celiac gluten sensitivity or gluten intolerance. And those are people who don't necessarily have the same reaction for the same reasons, but they still are going to have very similar symptoms to celiac disease. And going on a gluten-free diet can benefit them. So the celiac diet definitely has a place. I'm just not sure it's weight loss. But so really you have to ask yourself, like, why are you restricting gluten if you don't have celiac disease or gluten intolerance? If it's for weight, it's help us, lower our cholesterol and our risk for some of these chronic diseases. The soluble fiber especially is important, like in oatmeal. And then vegetables and fruits, getting the fiber, getting the nutrients. So just remember, carbs are not our enemy. But yeah, that's just kind of gluten-free diet in a nutshell. Are there any questions or comments or things you've heard people try with that?
My brother has celiac disease.
Okay,
He's probably the skinniest guy I know,
yeah.
but it's because it's hard to find food that tastes good. It's
Mhm.
gluten-free, so you don't feel like overdosing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really expensive.
Yeah.
To
Oh my
buy a
gosh,
lot
I
of
know.
gluten-free food.
Yes, like gluten-free bread is like over $4 for half a loaf or something like that. And the crackers, they're upwards of, $5 to $6, and it's smaller packaging, so, the gluten-free products are pretty expensive. One way that you can go is going towards like the quinoa and the grains that don't naturally have gluten in them. Oatmeal, as long as it says gluten-free, oatmeal is naturally gluten-free, but it's processed in plants where gluten is processed. So you just have to make sure that it says gluten-free on the label, but that's a good source. So you don't have to just look for those gluten-free products, but I know quinoa is not the cheapest thing either. But like rice is gluten-free. So there are gluten-free options that you can sow your carbs in, for sure. But I know that's a big challenge. And even like some cereals, like Chex Mix, Chex cereal, not Chex Mix, is gluten-free. So there are some options, but I know it is kind of difficult.
Is celiac something you're born with, or can you develop it over time?
You can develop celiac over time. Some people are, like, did he?
He wasn't diagnosed until he was 17, 18.
And did he have problems?
He started experiencing severe stomach discomfort.
Okay,
How about that in
yeah. So yeah, it can be developed, and same with, like, I know my grandma just developed fructose intolerance. So, sometimes our bodies just stop producing the enzymes that break down some of these things like fructose, or they're in limited amounts, or we just don't produce as much as we used to. So, yeah, they can be developed.
You don't have to worry about getting a beer building, you can have beer.
Yeah, it's true. I have seen gluten-free beers.
It's not good.
I don't know how that would taste.
Just try it.
Not good, okay. So yeah, okay, well, let's talk about, so what are your reasons for starting a new diet, I guess? Health reasons? Okay, like, give me an example.
My family was susceptible to heart disease,
Mm-hmm.
and so I was tested for the
Oh, mm-hmm.
And so because of how high that came out,
Mm-hmm.
the doctor passed me on it. On that diet, but I'm just supposed to mostly watch what I eat, but I'm supposed to exercise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's the other thing, diet's one component, but when you're making a lifestyle change, exercise is so key, especially, with like heart disease and things like that. Cholesterol levels specifically, we know that exercise can have a really great impact on your HDL cholesterol, bumping it up, which is the good cholesterol, and it can lower LDL cholesterol. So that's huge, and I know a dietitian, skinny as can be, it's totally hereditary. She eats super well, and the only thing that really worked for her was she became a runner, and her lipid levels just completely improved. So, yeah, exercise can have a huge impact on that too.
And I was shocked when you said I did it with $5.
Oh, with exercise?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big change.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and even, I know that can be kind of daunting, but even just kind of starting small and trying to work your way up.
Can you break that exercise off, like 30 minutes?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
reasons? I know weight loss is one, obvious one. No, okay. So I think it's really important to know why you're going on one before. So just a quick summary, all these diets have restriction and accountability. I think some people do diets because it's something to be accountable for. It's something that they can be like, oh, if I cut this out, that's a step to reach weight loss, which I totally understand. And I think for some people, you know, things like Weight Watchers or just trying to eat healthier with a friend that you can tell, like kind of bounce ideas off back and forth, or to keep accountability, tell them what you're doing each day, helps people keep on track. So I think the accountability part is key, but the restriction is interesting because all these different diets tell you to restrict different nutrients. So like the ketogenic diet restricts carbs, whereas Weight Watchers restricts fat, calories, and sugar, and then the gluten-free diet restricts gluten. So it's kind of interesting that all these fad diets are restricting a different nutrient, so there's not a consistent message across the board. I will say with Weight Watchers, it is proven that we need to reduce our fat, calories, and sugar. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're really analyzing, does this diet make sense? What are they trying to get you to do, type thing. But we know that each nutrient has an important role in our body. Carbs is our primary and preferred fuel source, especially during those fast bursts of energy like we talked about. Fat is important for brain development. It's the structure in our membranes. For women, you know, you actually need to have a certain body fat percentage to be fertile. Same with men, but women's is just a little bit higher. And fat helps with our fat-soluble vitamin absorption, so like vitamin A, D, E, and K. Those all need fat to help them properly absorb. And then gluten, it is the protein found in a lot of our grains, but those grains provide us with essential B vitamins and fiber, so there's definitely benefits to those foods. So what we do know based off the dietary guidelines for Americans is that 3/4 of Americans don't consume enough fruits, vegetables, dairy, and it even included oils in there, which was interesting. So a lot of people don't even get, you know, one serving of vegetables in a day. So I think important things to focus on are just getting those foods that have been shown to improve health. Over half of Americans are meeting or exceeding the recommendation for grains and protein. So a lot of our diet is meats and those refined carbohydrates like white breads and pastas, cakes, cookies, crackers, things like that. Most Americans exceed the recommendation for added sugar, saturated fat, and sodium. So those are three things that it is helpful to watch, especially, you know, on your nutrition facts labels, and just learn more about what foods have those things in them. And then this is the My Plate message. It's pretty basic, but I think that's why it's so good. You can actually visualize what your plate should look like each time, or what you should try to strive for. Half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables, which is pretty easy to understand and visualize. And then the other half should be grains and proteins, and then it's good to have a dairy source in there as well. So for roughly, I kind of gave a range based off of different calorie counts for women and men, but we're supposed to try to get 1.5 to 3 cups of vegetables per day. Fruits, 1.5 to 2 cups. Grains are 5 to 7 ounce equivalencies, which I know we don't really think in ounces that often, but like a piece of bread is 1 ounce. Half a cup of cereal is 1 ounce, things like that. So you can kind of see that you can have plenty of grains in your day. And then dairy, 2.5 to 3 cups. Protein, 4 to 6 ounces. So protein, about 3 ounces is the size of your palm and just a little bit thicker, especially for females. It's about 3 ounces, or like a deck of cards. So you can kind of visualize. we don't need a huge steak, or, you know, to get our protein in for the day. We probably exceed our protein needs
Are these numbers per meal or per day?
per day.
Per day.
Yep. Yep, you can actually, you can get on My Plate's website and put in your height, your weight, and your activity level, and gender, and it'll tell you about how much of each food group you should be getting each day to get a more specific idea. I kind of think that the website overestimates calories a little bit. That's just my personal opinion. So you just kind of have to know your body too. And then everyone is different. Find what works best for you. So like if you want to make a lifestyle change, think about what you do well and what you can work on. Instead of choosing foods that are bad and never eating them, try to identify 2 or 3 things that maybe you could improve. So like whether it's eating too many foods and beverages with added sugars and fats, eating big portions, skipping meals, which we know can lead to overgrazing at other meals. Frequently drinking like really sugary and high-fat coffee drinks, or pop, consuming too much alcohol, things like that. So just choosing a couple things to work on at a time and really finding some good strategies to improve. Set real expectations and goals. So for an example, I chose eating large portions. So identify what you want to work on, which would be eating smaller portions, and then find strategies that work for you. So using a smaller plate. I noticed this when I got married and we got our new dishes. It came with a big plate and a small plate, like a lot of sets do. And my husband had his dishes that were handed down to him from his parents. And I looked at the small plate in the set versus his normal size plate from his parents, and they were the same size. And the big plate was like twice as big. So, and that's the same with restaurants. It's just how manufacturers are producing. We like big in America, big everything. So it's really important to be aware of that because we think that our plate should be full. And visually, if you see a small plate that's full, that's going to be more satisfying than a big plate that's got only half the room taken up. So just a strategy to consider. Taking smaller portions, boxing up half your meal at the restaurant before you begin to eat so you don't feel like you have to finish the whole thing. A big one is waiting 20 minutes after you eat before you go get seconds because it takes a while for our stomachs to communicate to our brains that we're full. So it's really important just to slow down. I know we're in a rush all the time, but slow down, talk to people while you're eating, and just really make sure that you're still hungry before you're going up for more. So just identifying simple strategies that can help you be successful is really important. A lot of people just say, I want to lose weight, and then they're not successful because, you know, they don't know specifically what they're doing to lose weight. And then like we said, you know, it's not just about diet, it's about what you can do to improve your lifestyle. So moving more, managing your stress. I know there's some emotional eaters out there, or just, you know, you come home from work and maybe that's your go-to thing. Like if you walk through the kitchen to get into your house, you just, you know, like I'm home, I should eat. So just thinking about what triggers you to eat. Are you really hungry, or are you just, is it part of your habit, your routine? And then being mindful of people around you. I think this is an important one. Like for alcohol example, if you go out, you know, someone loves to just, you have a good time with this person, you guys like to drink, and you guys order a lot of food afterwards, you know, just planning ahead, not saying you enjoy yourself, but just plan ahead how you're going to deal with people who maybe aren't promoting the lifestyle changes you want to make. So you know how you're going to respond to them, or how you're going to limit those distractions or kind of bad influences. So yeah, that's pretty much my presentation. I provided you guys with a couple handouts. This handout, the Eat Right one, is from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. It's a very well-rounded approach to making it more of a lifestyle change, not so much a diet. And it really focuses on getting into a wellness state of mind. So really reflecting, what are you willing to do? How ready for change are you? Those are all important things to consider. And then the My Goal Tracker, I just encourage you guys to try to write down your goals and strategies you'll use and kind of track how you're doing. This is just an example of something I threw together. You can use whatever form, you can use your phones, whatever. But just keeping yourself accountable or finding that accountability piece is a great way to do it. But my main message is, variety, moderation, those best strategies for finding the balance and leading a healthy lifestyle, yes.
So if you want to start a diet and don't know where to start, what is your, do you just Google something and start looking, or are there some resources in town that you can go to? What would be your suggestion?
I guess it would be, I found these, identify the problem areas just on the website or going to My Plate, seeing what the recommendations are, because these are backed by research, and then analyzing one area that you can improve. So, and you guys can even write this down. I can try to find the exact website that I got these from, but just thinking about what you think you don't do as well of. Do you overeat on your portion size, or do you have a hard time with sweets, or do you think you don't get enough fruits and vegetables based off the recommendations? Just more thinking about something that you've always wanted to change about the way you eat or think might be a problem, and then going off of that. So I can try to, I would mainly go off the recommendations, the fruits, vegetables, protein, grains, and dairy each day.